All right, so I said it about a year ago, and it is actually happening right now. Local Law 18 just passed in New York City, and it is basically trying to make Airbnbs not a thing anymore. I said a long time ago, the first thing they'll try to do is restrict short-term rentals, and they are doing that. I think we're going to see a lot more of that into election season. We're going to see a lot of new policies coming out from politicians while they're on the campaign trail, trying to mess with the housing market. And I'm going to dive into that in this video. It's going to be a quick one. Happened last night. It's just too good not to talk about. There's a lot of things you need to know. I'll give you my opinion on kind of where we're going with this, and maybe this will help you out if you're an investor, real estate agent, or just trying to figure out what the market is doing, because a lot is happening. Let's get right into it. And I want you to comment down below with your thoughts, because we're working through this together. There's a lot of unknown things going on in real estate, really in the finance world in general, and this is the only way we can figure it out. For the last year, we've been navigating it through what is somebody else saying about the market on YouTube or on the internet or in these articles. And half these articles you see that are written, they're written by a journalist somewhere that's probably never even owned real estate. And we're all reading it like it's law. So I figured, as a real estate agent and as a dude that owns real estate and has owned a lot of real estate and always thinks about real estate, maybe I should put my opinion out there as somebody that actually does real estate. So I'm going to share down below some of the links to some of these articles so you can dive through them yourself. Last night I got a phone call about 8 o'clock from one of the other real estate agents I'm good friends with. He actually lives right down the street from me, work at the same brokerage because I'm a real estate agent too. And he was like, dude, did you see what just happened in New York? And I was like, you know what? No, tell me. And he was like, they just outlawed Airbnbs pretty much. I was like, totally? I just did not think that was, they were capable of that. And I read into it, and sure enough, basically it's going to affect like about 40,000 properties, probably a little more than that, just because there's a lot of non-registered properties out there that are doing short-term rentals. And, New York had been trying to crack down on it in a few different ways, trying to say, okay, less than 30 days, can't do that. It's going to be more than 30 days. Or, some states have 6 months or less. If it's over 6 months, there's different rules. But they just said, you know what, we've had enough. And they said, if you're not living in the property and like basically renting out your side 2 rooms and you're not there, then you cannot Airbnb your property. They're giving them so much time to register, and New York is just kind of throwing up a government registry for Airbnbs. And if you watch some of my videos from last year, I said the first thing they'll do is put a quota on how many properties out there that can have a Airbnb or a short-term rental permit, and it'll basically create more inventory on the market, because so many properties that would be rented to tenants are now just being soaked up for Airbnbs. One, because landlords are really kind of tired of their properties getting trashed, and then you can't get the people out, and the evictions are so bad, especially through COVID, that they said, you know what, I would rather just have a short-term rental that I can get them out on Monday, fix whatever's wrong, and then put it back on the market. So the meat and potatoes of this entire debate really boils down to they're trying to find inventory from somewhere, okay? The short-term volume of properties, the short-term rentals, is a large volume of properties, 40, 50, like in New York, 40,000 properties will probably be affected by this, and they're hoping to get those back out on the rental market and drive rent rates down. Will it? I don't know. Should they do it? I don't know. I feel like people should be able to own property and do whatever they want to with it. If we're talking about corporations, well, then we really need to dive into corporate law as America and decide how big is too big. And that's really up to the states and Congress. But on its face right now, what is the law? And these people purchased this property with the intent to be able to do something. And now we have, well, this state, New York, I'm in Florida, but the state of New York has said you can now not do this. And me in Florida, I'm looking at this and I'm like, will they do that here? Will they do it in Mississippi? Will they do it in Georgia? Will they do it in North Carolina? Will they do it in California or Seattle? And it's going to differ whether you live in a liberal world or a more conservative real estate environment. And you really got to ask yourself these questions, because this could cost you a lot of money. You look at the lay of the battlefield, you got high interest rates, you got high insurance premiums, and you got high prices. Like I said in my last video, statistically, the real estate market is still up, and I don't see it coming back down. Short of a financial catastrophe created by high interest rates, it would take something to break to drive down the real estate market. Because if interest rates start to come back down, and we will see this in election season, real estate's going to go up because money is getting cheaper. And I don't think they've solved the inflation problem. So you're going to see a lot of people just acquiring real estate. And they still haven't solved the FDIC problem with how much cash you can keep in a bank account safely. Under the FDIC, 250,000 and above is not insured. They haven't solved that question. Really gave us a warm and fuzzy after the Silicon Valley Bank destruction. So people are just buying real estate and parking money in it. They're just, okay, I got $1 million. There's 5 houses. Oh, I got another 250,000. Buying this house, because banks are a question mark. And if you believe that the real estate market is going to collapse, well, the banking world is going to collapse too. They both will go down together. I remember when they started raising interest rates, and I made videos about this, where there was internet mortgage companies just getting liquidated on the spot. I had 3 deals that the mortgage lender got fired in the middle of the transaction, or even at the end, and we had to find another lender. That's scary. So if you think that real estate prices are going to go down and people are going to get foreclosed on or whatever, the banking world is also going to go down. It will take the entire real estate will take the entire market down with it. So you got to make that decision. Another thing to look out for is any government-backed mortgages. I feel like, not a lender, but I can feel it coming, that, and I said this in another video, the Biden administration has already put out a memo saying that any government-backed mortgage, they're going to put stipulations on these mortgages in the future to saying what you're going to be able to do with these properties. I think they're going to restrict whether you're going to be able to do it short-term, like rent it short-term, or maybe even instituting some type of rent control into it. There's going to be a lot of things that they're going to say through the mortgage that you have to comply with. I mean, we see that with FHA, and we see it with, whether you can acquire some of these properties through certain types of mortgages, whether it's a secondary, income property, or what you're going to do as it being your home. They're going to put in stipulations that'll say, hey, this is this type of loan. You will not be able to short-term rent this property. And they're going to try to change the rental market by either constricting or expanding. And I think they're flirting with different ways to stimulate or compress certain markets. And we've seen that through the tax code. We've seen it through a lot of different things. It's going to be very interesting, but I think government-backed mortgages is going to be the way that they can really put the hammer on certain parts of the real estate market. So when we look at these things, short term, this could actually break some people and their plans for financial success in real estate. So we've now made this unstable by the government meddling in a market again. Every time the government meddles in the market without having the buyer and seller create their own transaction, we wind up with a problem. People could start just blowing out of these short-term rentals like today. You could see some parts of New York's real estate just start to collapse. Like the price would have to go through the floor if everybody starts liquidating, because you got to have buyers, right? You got to have a buyer and a seller. Well, if you just got sellers, well, inventory is coming on the market, volume's going up, and the price is going to go down. It's just common sense. And it could be a really scary thing. People got to really start thinking about this stuff. Because when I say real estate's not going to go down, I'm speaking nationally right now. I'm in Florida, and they're not doing that in Florida. So whatever the case in Schiller says about housing prices, statistically we're up. But this is really making a question mark, and you really got to think about it. So they said, you know what, Airbnb is a streamlined approach of not basically getting around the tenant laws in some ways, to where a little more flexible versus having somebody in there for a year, and if there's a major repair, you can't move them out, or if there's a payment problem or whatnot, or if you want to sell the property, like you can put it up for sale, Airbnb it while it's up for sale. It gives you a lot of options. But I think the hotel industry has a lot to do with this. The lobby of the hotel industry, they don't want to compete against Airbnbs. And, you know, a lot of people were taking properties that were pretty cool and putting them on the market and competing at the same level. I mean, when I went to Austin the other day, I looked at the Airbnbs versus the hotels, and, you know, I would be much more likely to go to an Airbnb than to deal with some of these stuffy, like, hotel rooms. So you're going to see these politicians saying, you know what, we're going to fix the real estate market by restricting the amount of properties these companies, these portfolio companies can have on the vacation rental and Airbnb, short-term rental, VRBO sites. It's going to take those 40,000 properties that are not able to be rented to tenants and now put them on the market so people can use them, so people can rent them and provide housing to people. And that's how they're going to sell it. For me, as a capitalist, I believe that if you purchase a property, you should be able to do whatever you want to with it. And there are those out there that don't like people to work hard and make money and be rewarded for the things that they have, the fruit of their labors. Well, you know, I understand that corporations are just absorbing so many properties on the market, and that's sad too. Don't really know what the answer is to that. That would probably be a later video because, you know, I got opinions. But there was already a big case that has been heard about, you know, this exact same situation in New York, and the judge said it was rational. This was a rational problem and that New York could fix it, and that's what they're trying to do. I don't know, because the amount of visitors that come into New York, and then the amount of short-term space that is needed, there's also a problem there. And, you know, hotels are obviously not absorbing all that. So there's a big question mark for that. And I think that this is going to definitely go into other states the closer we get to election season, because this is going to be filtered down, I guarantee you, through the Democratic Party to certain states, which is a lot of the northern states. And I think you're going to see some in the Republican wing go out there and try to do it too. Like in my city, the downtown area is usually run with more of a liberal hand than the actual county itself. And I think that, like Pensacola, they'll limit the amount of properties that they allow in, grandfathered in or whatever, the quota. And then they'll say, you know what, everything else has to be done on the rental market, you know, for long term, which will free up a lot of properties on the market to go and drive down rent in a lot of places, because there'll just be more inventory on the market. I see what they're trying to do. I saw this coming a long time ago. So if you have if you're buying a piece of real estate and you are doing your numbers for your return on capital with the per night amount, like 20 days out of the month, and then the per night, and then, you know, let's say you get $3,000 and you paid $300,000 for that property, you're saying you're at the 1% rule, and you're saying that your property is a viable, cash flowing, appreciating property, you're going to be wrong. I say this because now Airbnb is going to be a question mark, and you don't know if you're going to get those 20 days, or if you're even going to be able to get the permit to be allowed to short-term rent your property. Let's say you're in the downtown environment, you're in the downtown area, and they won't give you your your permit to do the short-term rental. Well, you're going to have to go to the actual rental market, the long-term rental market. And let's say instead of getting $3,000 a month, you're going to get $1,500 a month. And you paid $300,000 for that property. This is now a very bad investment, because your rental numbers, your cash flow numbers are below acceptable. Your insurance is probably going to be higher because everything is going up right now. Your maintenance is going up. all these numbers are going up, but yet the value of the property has to go down because the rent versus the amount you paid for it is off. Okay, you know, the 1% rule says if you got it for $300,000, you got to rent for $3,000 a month. And even now, a 1% property is probably not going to cash flow because insurance is going up, maintenance is going up. A lot of these things are going up. And if you're the first thing the insurance company asks you is if you have a short-term rental, if you're going to short-term rent this property, you're going to have more liability insurance, and they're probably going to make you have a lot of other things on your policy that it's going to be more expensive. And you really got to keep these things in mind when you're purchasing a property. So it's going to be interesting to see how New York digests this. I don't really know. They tried this with taxis a couple years ago with Uber. You know, Uber prevailed, but I don't think that real estate's going to prevail like this. There's a couple of other big question marks in the real estate industry. One right now is on real estate agents, whether, you know, the buyer has to pay for the buyer's agent now. I don't think that one's going to work because it's an actual contract question. The listing agreement says with the it says certain things with the seller that the commission covers, and the buyer's agent is what is covered in that commission split. So I think that's a contract question, whereas the Airbnbs is more of a local government and the infrastructure involved with having the flow of traffic. Like if you go on a beach, if you go to Pensacola Beach, Orange Beach, and you see the amount of Airbnbs, and you see the throughput, the traffic that the Airbnbs create in these neighborhoods, it is a lot. And there is a lot of traffic. Like Navarre Beach is an anthill with all the Airbnbs and the turnover and all the tourists. But that also drives up a lot of income for those little bitty beach towns. And you know, sometimes it's for 6 months and then it's over. And it does allow a lot of revenue to be produced. So there's a question there. Does New York want the income generated by these short-term rentals, or do they want to bow to the local population and drive down rental prices and drive down real estate prices by saying, hey, you've got to rent long-term now? I think the voters are going to have a big question to answer here, you know, in this next election season, whether it's one side or the other, whether you want to choose one or the other, because everybody has a different set of problems that they would like fixed. And that's what the voters are going to have to figure out. And I think it's going to cascade down into other states. And if you're a real estate investor, if you're a real estate owner, these are things you've got to really think about. Are you going to hold an Airbnb, or are you going to sell it? Are you going to buy it on Airbnb numbers, or are you going to just do it on actual rental numbers? You need to keep these things in mind. Comment down below with what you think. Would you keep an Airbnb, or would you just fire them off? And once they hit the market, what do you think is going to happen? Hope you enjoyed this video. I just had to digest my thoughts on this right quick to you guys, and maybe it helps you out. Maybe it gives you a little thought on the process that maybe you didn't think about before. I'm trying to drink my cup of coffee. I've been rambling a little bit, so I think I'm going to end this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.